I was sharing with a friend of mine about colorism, and I was like, it's so counterintuitive to me because as a Caucasian, I'm trying to get darker. I want to tan, so I don't want to be whiter. I'm white enough. And then, depending on, to your point, Indian nationalities or African American nationalities, that no more tan, lighter. So it's really, we can never be happy with who we are.
No, and it's so like, even though Leanne and Abi and I, when we were talking about it, we oscillate between like, we're like dropping it like it's hot and we're having a good time, and then we get into the seriousness of it all. But it really is a thing, particularly for Black women who are darker. And the fact, the
other thing that you brought up was the relationship or how white males treat African American or women of color. I was paying a lot of attention to that, where in my mind, it was a very innocent either comment or touch on the arm, maybe not received that way. So just the whole awareness of how people see. Yeah, it's fascinating to me.
It is. And I think, what's really interesting, I think, about this moment in time that we're in is like, because I feel like we're finally having all these, what I call closed door conversations out in the open. And all of a sudden we're all going, do you know what? Like, I felt really uncomfortable when this was happening. I felt really uncomfortable. We're now giving voice to like how we felt all this time, because for a long time, Chris, we would only be talking to our friends, we would never take it anywhere else, because it's like, it's our community thing,
You don't talk about it outside the supper table.
Word. There we go. So, look, we've got some friends. Fabulous. Right. Well, I know. Look, me and you start the conversation already. Like, people are like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, halfway through the conversation already. And hey, it was a great show. Catch you next time.
It's the end. No, we are just starting. So listen, Chris, I've got to do like the formalities before I get like super informal, as you already know my style, so I don't even need to like try it.
Yeah, we're good.
I'm not, alternative, I think, is the word that I would like to use for myself. And but let me tell you, so anyway, so we so Margie connected, like you and I listed like ages ago, and I messaged her and sent her a voice note, and I was like, hi Margie, do you think if I reached out to Chris, he would say yes to like doing a live stream with me? But like, I want to check with you first, because you know him better, because like, I don't want to come to him and he'd be like, why is she messaging me? And then Margie was like, well, Chris said, I wonder if Shereen is going to ask me. So here we are. We like minds. We're here. So listen, we are gonna talk about boardroom shenanigans in relation to this subject. And you know what, I'm not even going to take any of your shine, because like, there's so much that I'm just going to shut up. Like,
well, there's plenty of shine here, so
it's very warm. It's been very warm today, so I was literally like this. Look.
What is
warm?
Minds. What do you classify as warm in the United Kingdom?
Well, this is where I get confused, because you talk about it in Fahrenheit, don't you? We talk about it in Celsius. So I don't even know what the temperature is. But for me, like, when you start getting to 30 degrees,
that's hot. Yeah.
I'm good for nothing. Just like, just don't expect me to do anything. Okay. Do you know what I mean? And just like, I'm good for nothing.
Thank goodness for air conditioning.
Right. And a fan. Like, sometimes I have a little, like, I don't know where it's gone. It's like it's disappeared. Got a little makeshift fan that my daughter made me. So, that's always quite good. That's good. So listen, what I wanted to do is just hear from you, and I guess give some context as to how me and you were even having this conversation about race, about racism, about conversations that need to be had in the boardroom, and I guess your view on the world, partly because you're super fabulous and you've had a super fabulous career, which I'll let you tell people about, but also because like, I'm super blunt, we got to be honest, always interested in the white man's perspective. Do you know what I mean? Because my poor partner has to be the voice of all white men all over the world, because I'm like, what's going on? But it's good to kind of have this you know, just like what we were talking about, different perspectives, right? So I can now go, you're retired for an hour. I'm going to talk to Chris this evening, but it's quite nice to get a different perspective, because obviously I see the world through Shereen's lens, which means nothing is ever good enough. Nobody is ever good enough. Nobody's doing enough. Listen,
no pressure.
No pressure. However, obviously very conscious and aware that there will be other things at play, and I think it's really useful for the two of us who have had very different experiences. We are literally on the other side of the world from one another across the pond. We literally have very different life experiences, and it's just super fabulous that we're even here having this conversation. And I think that is in itself is a symptom or a sign almost of what should be happening when it comes to this. So, like, from real personal reasons, I'm so appreciative that you're here and you said yes.
So thanks for inviting me. This is I was giddy this morning, looking forward to this. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. So listen, tell me your story, Chris.
Tell me your story.
Tell me your story.
So I don't have much of a British accent. You've probably picked up on that.
I have zero. Your British accent is zero.
My accent was actually cultivated in the South. So I'm originally from a small town in North Carolina, and grew up here, and spent pretty much my formative years here. And let's just say that the South in the 1960s and 1970s, from a white male perspective, had a very one-dimensional lens of race, and the language was different. The terms were different. Terms that we now view as very hateful were, I don't know that they were hateful then, but they certainly were not terms of endearment either. So I came up in a world where that was what I knew. That's all I knew. White neighborhood, white family. I had no friends of color. Then in my middle school years, I actually was bused to a junior high school for integration purposes. And that was my first real, what I would consider, experience with people of color. So that was
what's that thing? Because I've never heard that. What's that whole thing about for integration purposes? What was the context of that?
So basically, they wanted to integrate the schools instead of separate schools for blacks or whites. They wanted to integrate.
Okay.
Yeah. So I didn't go to the closest school. They bused me across town to another school so that they had the right numbers and ratio of black and white students. So that was totally foreign to me. Getting on a bus was foreign. Back then, you walked to school. You didn't have your mom, shuttle you in the minivan with armed guards. So it was a little bit different back then. Yes, I walked uphill both ways in the snow to get to school. But then again, in middle school, I was bused across town. And I will tell you, even at what I would consider a young age, I didn't see the differences that I was hearing at the supper table. A lot of my, what you would consider favorite things to do, if you were going to stereotype, would align more closely with African-American youth. I was very much into basketball. I loved soul music. I loved rap. I loved the dance. It was just a natural fit. So while it was forced, it was not a natural relationship. So, and then get through high school and more, I'm having friends of color. So then after I graduate, I go into the Air Force. The Air Force has a term. It's called zero tolerance. I didn't know what zero tolerance meant. The office that taught the course was called social actions. So when they started basically interpreting this for the kid from North Carolina, and I have a real quick story to share with you on that.
No, share it.
Oh, it's a good one.
I'm going to make you talk a lot in this hour, Chris. I'll just let you know. Well,
I've tried to tone down my accent so you don't know where I'm from.
No, you're perfect. We only do authenticity, and I can understand you perfectly. So don't be trying it. Don't be trying it.
As we go into this training, it was very clear that the zero tolerance was about ethnicity. We treat each other fair. We treat each other with respect. We're all on the same team. We're all working together for the same goal, defending our country. So that level of awareness, I think, is what was really the foundation and shaping of where I am now. So the real quick story. So young kid from North Carolina, you get your first assignment. They tell you where you're going to go. So they gave me my assignment, and it said Elmendorf and the initials AK. So I call home, and that's back when there was pay phones. There was no cell phone or text message. Yeah. That's when people really still wrote letters and things. So I call home crying. I mean, 18 years old male crying because I'm going all the way to Arkansas. I'm thinking, Arkansas, I put in for South Carolina, North Carolina. They're sending me to Arkansas. Well, the public school systems in North Carolina are not perfect. So what I didn't know, AK did not stand for Arkansas. AK stands for Alaska. Now that really made me cry. So I end up.
Oh no, that's where you went.
My first assignment was Elmendorf Air Force Base, Alaska. So definitely a little further away from home than I had planned. But again, things happen for a reason. I was sent there, met some of my best friends, lifelong friends I've ever met. It was an amazing experience. Got there in the middle of summer, sun's up till 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, just things I'd never seen. Totally foreign concept. But the more that I was in the Air Force, the more people I came in contact with, the more I very quickly saw we are so much more alike than we are different. And I think over time that started getting even more traction and building more of a foundation. So, fast forward through 20 years of the Air Force, primarily law enforcement, just as you would see a local police department, everything from running radar to crime scene investigation. Had an opportunity to go to the FBI Academy. Air Force sent me to the National Academy. Quantico was amazing experience. But the more you experience, the more people you meet, once again, you have an opportunity to see where you're so much more alike than you have differences. But once again, white male, no issues. I don't have any race issues. Nobody's treating me differently. I tell people this a lot. I said, a lot of the Black Lives Matter and the police issues right now revolve around how an African-American may be treated when they're stopped or questioned or pulled over. The only thing I've ever worried about during a traffic stop is this going to affect my insurance rates? Now, that's a statement in and of itself, because I've never felt like there's any danger involved. I'm just upset that now if I get a speeding ticket, I'm going to have to pay more insurance. So those things, again, made me think a certain way, feel a certain way. So get out of the Air Force, retired 20 years, came back home, back to Gaston County where I grew up, and felt like I was in a time warp. So many things it was like nothing changed. Friends talked the same way, said the same things, had negative opinions of individuals that didn't look like them. So that was a real transition challenge for me coming back. And then, as fate would have it, I fell into an opportunity in public health. I could barely spell public health. Right. I was a cop. I was macho man. I have a gun and a badge. Y'all pay homage to me. So that was an entirely different job, if you will. You were taking care of the public in a whole different way. Protecting their health, providing services so that they could be healthy. So once I got a little more education there, as fate would have it, the community I serve consolidated the health department with social services, which is human services, with child welfare, adult protective services, food and nutrition, Medicaid, a lot of those services. So it gave me an opportunity to learn even more about the community. So if you combine all of those careers, still don't know what I want to be when I grow up, responded to difficult situations, i.e. Family matters or ethnic issues in the community. I've provided services for families in need, and I've had an opportunity to learn about systems that are not fair. They create differences, and I think you and I were talking before we went live about, if not now, then when. We really have an opportunity now to have tough conversations that we might not have had otherwise, but there's not a difficult issue on the planet that doesn't require tough conversations. Yeah. So, through all of those experiences, all those different check marks along the way, I had the ability to go into the different leadership positions. And probably one of the greatest lessons I learned, one of my super mentors, Master Sergeant Ron Hammond, taught me. He said, Dobbins, if you don't do anything else in life, make sure when you're in a position of leadership, you find people that don't look like you and don't think like you and trust them. And wow, I was young. I was like, yeah, whatever, old man, whatever. But those words still resonate. The facts still resonate. And, here I am. And, maybe I have something to offer and share those experiences with some leaders that may not think that's important. So anyway.
Well, listen, oh my goodness, right. So
we're done now. We can go. Is that it?
No, listen, you can't go. You're not going anywhere. So for a start, I just want to check if I've got fabulous people who are watching. Just let us know if there's any technical issues. It's all fine my end. I can hear Chris perfectly. But if there's, okay, no, fine. Lucic has just said solid advice. There we go. Look, so they can see and hear us. Right, so it's just one thing I want to say before I dive into the leadership in the boardroom thing and this quote that or the advice that your mentor gave is, it's really funny when you talk about the ticket thing. As a white man, the only thing you have to be worried about when the police stop you is about a ticket. And I was talking to somebody about, and I can't remember who it was, talking the week, and my memory is not very good from that point of view, but I was saying I've got a 12-year-old daughter. I live in what's seen as like quite a nice part of Kent, just outside of London, right? And when Black people are talking to their Black boys and they're giving them the talk, it's not the birds and the bees, it's not the talk about girls, it's the talk about what you do if the police stop you. So they're having that talk. And somebody said to me, like, yeah, but when you're raising like Black women, that's not the talk that you have. And I go, no, it's the same sort of talk, but it's a different angle. So I remember saying to my daughter, she's 12 and she's a young 12. So all her friends are older way before her. She's a summer baby, right? So they're all like, right, she's the baby. And, she wanted to go to the shopping centre. We've got a massive shopping centre that's quite famous here. And, she wanted to go there. And what I drummed into her is, if you go into any shops with your friends and they misbehave or they do anything they are not supposed to do, whether they pick up something and put it in their pocket is shoplifting, whether they start messing about anything. And I said, you get yourself out of that shop. I said, you do not hang around. You do not try I said, you just get yourself out of the shop, because I said, the reality is, Tia, and I said, when the security people come, they will take you to the police station and have the conversation about what did or didn't happen. But your other friends who are not Black get to have that conversation still in the store while they call their parents and tell their parents to come and get them. I said, they're not calling me until you're at the police station. And until she understood that, so I literally made her repeat it. And I was like, what? So I gave her different scenarios, and I'm giving her all the scenarios of things that could happen that could draw attention to her and her friends. And I said, you're not going by yourself until I know that you have got the memo. Do you know what I mean? And that's it. Like, you know me and my got the memo. I'm all about the memo. If people don't get the memo, Chris, it's a problem. Even my 12-year-old, have you got the memo? Like, she was like, yes, Mom. No, really. And then like it's now like she's 12, so she probably doesn't quite understand the magnitude of what I'm saying to her. But give her a few years, and she will go. When kids start to be more cognizant of the world that we're living in. And that's the thing about the difference almost in what it's like to be living while Black versus being white and being aware of this, but you can choose how far or not you engage. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. The other day I had I was watching ESPN, and they were interviewing a very famous athlete, not, I'm sure internationally famous, LeBron James. And, one of the quotes that he made, if I'd have heard it, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, I probably would have dismissed it. But for some reason, it really got my attention. He said, unless you are Black and male, you will never know what it feels like to be treated in a racist way. And I thought, I know that sounds very, well, duh, yeah. But
yeah.
I mean, literally, there is no way I, as a white male, can feel what a Black man feels when they're being treated in a racist way. I can be empathetic, I can be sympathetic, I can think that I might know what that feels like. But until you're the one who's being treated that way, you can't possibly comprehend it. So the fact that you're having to have those conversations is unbelievable at 2020. And again, law enforcement. Okay, so I'm not gonna sit here and bash all of law enforcement.
No, of course not. Listen, my sister is a police officer for the Met Police, so I'm the same. I could never, I love sometimes I love the generalization, and I go, but not all police officers, because my sister is amazing, and so is my brother-in-law. Do you know what I mean? So it's always that. Yeah. Not everybody, but yeah.
But no, I mean, I think that is a very real conversation that needs to be had. Now, I will say this too. I had conversations, or my father had conversations with me like that when I was young, but it wasn't specific to a police action. It was, when you leave this house, you better be respectful. I don't care who it is that's talking to you. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. 3 bags full. And if that conversation has to be modified because of your skin color, that's a statement. I mean, that truly is a statement. That we live in a culture that parents feel like they have to explain that or help their children understand that. So, yes, one more example of something we need to work on.
And I think the other thing that I just kind of connected some dots, I guess, with that story in the boardroom is and this is a thing that goes on in my head, right? Sometimes I'm so conscious of being like the overprotective mother, and I'm like, oh my God, because I don't want my daughter to be that one, in the police station. I wasn't best behaved when I was in my teens.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say. Okay. That's all I'm going to say. My mum's on here, so she knows. I'm not saying anything else, but
Okay.
Okay. Nobody can tell me anything.
Show. It's your show. Whatever.
So that's all I'm going to say. I wasn't always an angel, but
shocking.
I know, right? Not rebellious at all. Never. But what I am so conscious of when I'm talking to her is part of me goes, I'm telling her this because I want her to be safe in the here and now. Yep. But as we're in 2020 and I'm still having this conversation, I'm also conscious is like I'm setting her up and I'm conditioning her from 12 years old to not see the police as people that can help her when she's in trouble, even though like her auntie and her uncle are police officers, forget that. Yep. But what I'm also saying to her is because of the color of her skin and because she doesn't want to get into trouble, she has to show deference to people who are white.
Yep.
Because they have the power or not, whether it's to put her in jail, whether it's to not give her a job, and I tell you, like, it is a mind fuck, Chris, because you can't.
Back to the
I know better.
Back to the LeBron statement. I don't know how that feels. I can never know how that feels. So I can only empathize and sympathize. But yes, the fact that you have to have that kind of conversation with your 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's great. And then when you fast forward that, so then when I think about from a business perspective, right, and I'm thinking about, senior leaders, listen, you've been there, done that more so than I, and I've got some experiences that
I've got a lot of scars from it too. So
well, you've got a lot of stories, and I know you've made a lot of different impact, positive impacts wherever you've been. You don't need to tell me anything, Chris. I already know that. But and I'm thinking to myself, and I'm talking to people, and I'm seeing what they're writing, and I'm seeing their views, and I think there's even a lack of acknowledgement that they so the awareness that you have that you will never know is an awareness itself. Do you know what I mean? And some people don't even have that awareness, and they're not willing to take it that far to think about it. Right now, they just see it as an irritant. They see us, meaning not us as like individuals, because they'll go, you know, like, I don't mind black people. You know, it's not from that point of view, but it's almost like this noise that we're making. You know, the fact that we're marching, the fact that we're, you know, whatever your views are about, you know, the fact that we're basically saying enough is enough, that is seen as important, and it's seen as something that's interrupting business. It's also seen as something where I've had people say to me, but do you not think, Shereen, that you as black people are being selfish because of COVID-19 and the impact on the economy? And now you're saying, hang on a minute, what about us? What about us? What about us? And then we should really be focused on everything. Listen, Chris, I kid you not. So this is like,
I can't make that.
I know.
I can't make that.
No, listen, and I'm just like, I'm a little. And they go, oh, but Shereen, I feel like I can say this to you, and I'm like, yeah, but you know, that's the reality. So you know, for every leader who is like you, and it's all about impact and all about positive impact, and just thinking about, you know, like the difference that you can make in whatever way. But fundamentally, your mentor gave you a starting point, because he said, to some extent, you get credit if people around you are different. You get minus points. You're in withdrawal if everybody looks the same as you. And I can't understand why business leaders haven't got that memo. Me and my famous memos. Why haven't they got that?
Yeah, I think, well, one, it's a great question, and I certainly can't speak for every leader that's out there, but one of the things that sometimes is lost on a person in charge is how they got there. And sometimes they think that they are the reason that they are there. In other words, nobody helped them, nobody supported them, nobody trusted them. They just did everything by themselves. And those leaders tend to out themselves by saying I instead of we, me instead of us. So they're not hard to spot. But what I would say is we all, I mean, everyone have a natural tendency to associate and or hire in our likeness. 100%. That is a human fact. Okay. So what I said earlier is something I have to really, in many ways, force myself to remember. I've already got me in this organization. I don't need another me. I got that base covered. I need people who can cover the other bases so that the organization has a lens on all the issues that we're up against, and hiring talented individuals to represent that voice. And that's really hard to help with your managers see as well. Because again, we all have those natural tendencies. So when somebody brought me a hiring package, the very first thing I asked them is, are they qualified? I don't have pictures. I don't have anything. Are they qualified? Okay, well, they know that question's coming. Okay, what do they do that you can't? That was the second question. And if they didn't have an answer to the second question, why are you hiring them? You can do that already. You've got the answers to those questions. So, and it frustrated them. And you know, we had some back and forth, and more often than not, I would defer to the supervisor because they were the ones that were going to have to deal with the hire anyway. I wasn't going to have to deal with them. They were. But making sure they knew they had to go through that process of answering the questions made them do a little more homework before they made the final selection. I think the other thing too, and I've seen this on both sides, and I don't think there's a such thing as reverse racism. I think that's a flawed term.
Can you tell people this, Chris? Please tell people.
Yeah, it's just racism or it's not, okay? I mean, it's just reverse. That implies there's only one way. So what I struggle with is when we look at quotas, okay? Yeah. And we say, okay, we've got to have, 10% Latino. We've got to have 25% African American. We've got to, now, look here, people. If that's how you're going about your practice, then you've missed the point altogether. Okay,
Chris, missed the point. Can you tell? Please keep telling people. Please, oh my God! Like this is like one of those moments. Like, listen, let me fan you. Let me fan you through the waves, because like 125% 125%. If that's what you're leading with, this is what you know.
So anyway, when we have those, we have those boardroom conversations, and we met weekly to talk about a number of issues, but more often than not, this day and age, recruiting and retention was at the top of the list. That literally was the biggest issue that our agency dealt with. High turnover. And you have to sometimes drill down to get what the answer to that really is. Are people leaving for more money? Is it the culture? Is it, what is it? And it is always varying degrees. But what you try to create was a agency of, and I'll use this word, agency of understanding, a culture of inclusiveness, where people feel like they're valued, regardless of their makeup, regardless of where they come from. And that's work, and it's hard work. And one of the things, I was on a podcast a couple weeks ago, and one of the panelists made a great point. I'm walking around like a peacock with his feathers all spread out, thinking, hey, I created a culture committee for our agency. Isn't that really white of me to be able to do that and really say, hey, everybody's important? And then I walked away. Right. I wasn't part of the meetings. I wasn't part of the committee. I wasn't part of the work. Okay, I checked the block by creating it, but by me not being at the table, did it really say I thought it was important? So panelists made a great point. I will never make that mistake again. If you're gonna establish something and create something and it's important, then you need to be part of it. Oh. Otherwise, it's lip service. Correct. So listen, I learn every day. I make mistakes every day. I learn every day. And I think if we had more, I'll use this, boardroom members that could reflect about that and know that they are all a work in progress, I think we could make some significant improvements. But I tell you, it's hard work. It is not easy. And it's not intuitive for a lot of people.
No, and that's why, when I first started talking about this and going, these companies and somebody, and somebody said to me, oh, but Shereen, you do know that it's not that easy, to your point, right? And I was like, listen, one, I'm not freshly squeezed. Two, I've been in HR. It's my favorite. It's like my Abi phrase. I'm not freshly squeezed. I've been in HR. I've been in business for a long time. And what I said to them is, I am not saying that I'm not saying put your efforts into changing people's bias or that, from that point of view, like there's other things, but in a business sense, what I am saying is, because we always go to our default, and the default as human beings is what is easy, all I'm saying is counteract that by putting in things that interrupt that pattern of behavior. And it's only when you put those things in place, then you then get to equality. And some of those things might mean you've got to put in equitable practices, which means you have to acknowledge that not everybody is at the same starting point.
Exactly.
Which is kind of what, and what I remember talking to the CEO last week, and I was saying to them about, this whole idea of, equity and equality, because I think people use the phrases interchangeably, but they don't understand the difference, right? Yeah. And I was saying, look, forget the quotas for a minute, but when we're talking about addressing systemic and structural racism, as a business, you have to recognize that to get to equality, you have to put in equitable things, which means there are some people who get to stay on the start line and off they go under their own steam. And there are other people who are minus 100 meters, and you've got to help them and put in things in place to get them to the same start line. That's the difference. But I think because, again, we're not taking the time to be clear on the terminology, we're not, and I think a lot, to your point, a lot of board people are thinking, let's just react. Because listen, I've been there when something's gone on, you're just thinking, shit, like as a business, we've got to do, and let's, you're firing off the emails, aren't you? Somebody in your team, can hey, can you, let me know when it's done. Do you know what I mean? And then when somebody says like, what's going on with that? And you go, oh no, listen, I pay other people to go and do this. That's not for me. That's not my job. That's not my bag. And then But with this, it's not the same. I keep saying to people, like, it's not the same thing. You cannot devolve responsibility because you feel uncomfortable, because you feel you are above the pay grade to deal with it. Do you know what I mean? And that's the bit that I still think people haven't got the memo.
No, people that know me also know that I say this a lot. Whenever something needs to be done, and now I have to do it, I say, well, I used to have people for that. And I really do miss my people.
I'm not going to call you Chris. I'm going to go Dobbins. Dobbins, you were that person.
So I do. I really miss my people because I hired very talented, capable professionals to do that aren't like me. Look, if I could do it, I wouldn't have needed them. So once again, you have to hire people for the right reasons to do the right jobs, trust them, support them, and get out of their way. And if you do that fairly, equitably, equally, all of those things, you're going to build an amazing team of individuals and one of the other things that we spent a ton of time on was getting to know each other. I say this a lot, everybody, and I mean everybody, makes an assessment when they see another human being, and whatever their biases are, whatever their experiences are, that's how they see that individual before they ever hear a syllable out of their mouth or have a conversation. So where I try to start is, tell me your story. Mm-hmm. Once I know your story, now, and if you want to know mine, I'll tell you mine. Then we have a kind of a starting point from where we can maybe understand where each other's coming from. So that was a huge part of our management team work, was getting to know each other, wanting to know our leadership styles, our personality styles, our traumatic life experiences that probably shaped us, definitely shaped us, some good, some not. But if you know your teammates, if you know what they're about, who they are, how they operate, you are going to be so much a better teammate because you understand them. And I think that's why sports teams do so well. They know so much about each other. They come together for a common cause. They build this fraternity, sorority, and then they go and work together and take care of each other. Why? Because they know so much about each other. And, when you don't know, you make assumptions. And we both know what that does. So get to know your team, build a good team, take care of your team, understand your team, and support your team. And more often than not, you're going to come out with a win.
And I think the other thing, just to extend on that, is that, like, if somebody was listening to this and they were going, oh my God, yeah, that's so true. Like, I need to make more time. So one, you've got to prioritize the time to go and make the connections in the first place, right?
Because there's so much time in the day.
Right, you've got to prioritize that. And the reason why it's a lot easier to prioritize that in sport is because they recognize the 2 + 2 = the 4, and the 4 is the win. Right,
Bingo.
It's the time to the team.
Bingo.
The time to the team.
Got to answer why am I part of this team? What is my part of this team? Am I the quarterback? Am I the lineman? Am I a receiver? What is my role on this team? And helping the teammate understand that is a huge part of it. And maybe you're not a starter, maybe you're a backup, but just knowing who you are and where you fit in, everybody's got to know that. So, I'm sorry, one of the other things, and I was watching, and we talked briefly about it, but used another term that was unfamiliar to me, the term colorism. And once again, it's about understanding your team, understanding different cultures per se. Again, white male, doesn't affect me. Did not know colorism exists within races. And for those watching that might not know, I might have been the only one that didn't know what it was.
No, so there was a lot of people that didn't know. Yeah. There was a lot of people that didn't know.
So even within in the different communities, the ethnic communities, Indian, African American, people of color, it appears there is a structure or a rank order, if you will, based on the darkness or the lightness of one's skin. I didn't know that. I had never even heard of that. So a lot of this is not that maybe I don't care, it's I don't know. So being better informed, even internal racism of races is the more aware you are, the better you are going to be prepared to answer cultural challenges. So there's not a day that goes by that I don't try to understand something better or learn something more. But and believe me, I have a lot to learn, but it really is interesting to learn more about the different cultures and how they view their own race. So yeah, so much. It's very complex.
Yeah, and I think it's you know what, it's super complex. And I think just a couple of things about what you said there. I think one is some people don't have the self-awareness to assume that, like I always say, the starting position is I know nothing.
Yeah, right there with you. Right there with you.
You know what I mean? Listen, I'm learning every day at school day. Like somebody's telling me something, I'm going, no way. Do you know what I mean? And to some extent, I would want leaders to go back to that human curiosity thing, right?
There you go.
Says, we don't know, not that we don't know everything, because even the word everything assumes that you know a lot. I would say we know nothing right now. So then you start asking the question, why is it I don't know about the struggles and the challenges of being Black? Yeah. Why do I not know why we don't have more Black, brown, trans, this group? Why do we not have this in our business?
Great question.
People that we do have in this business, why do I not know who they are? Like, I don't mean like when you've got thousands of people, but you know what I mean? Like, you know, why is it that they feel like they're on an island and they're coming into work and they feel like, you know, they're shedding who they are, they're coming in, they're sitting down, they're doing the work, and then they're going home day in and day out. They don't feel like they're part of the team going back to the sports bit. They don't feel like they're part of any team.
Right.
But more importantly, even when they are part of the team, they don't feel like the rest of the team has got their back because the rest of the team look a certain way and they don't.
Great point. Great point.
What I mean? So you've got all of these, you know, things, you know, that people should, and it comes from a place of self-awareness, as I said. It comes from the place of we are just like just a blank slate, really, you know, to learn, right?
Yeah, I think once again, you know, I keep going to this, but if it doesn't affect you, you probably don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. Yes. So you either have to force yourself or you have to have a reason to learn. And again, I would hope any leader would feel like they need to continue to learn, because you're never going to know, to use your word, everything. And if you don't understand the importance of the culture of your organization, then you won't be a leader long. So they'll find somebody who does place a very high priority on that. But it's also not lost on me that I do not represent, I'll use the word role model, and I know that's not the right word.
No, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. So if I'm looking for someone who's successful like me, and I'm trying to work on culture, I need a spokesperson. I need a representative, and it may not be the leader. Right. So how do you connect those dots in those relationships, understanding that you need everybody to buy in? It's not just this group or that group or this C officer or that C officer, and you know, in the suite, you really need everybody, and so therefore you need to connect with everybody. You know, one of my last jobs before I transitioned to this new world, I had community health educators. And they made it almost their mission to get me to racism classes, diversity classes, LGBTQ plus classes. And I don't think they were doing that because they thought I need all the education I can get. But I don't think they were trying to make a point that I was so far behind that I needed this undivided training. I think their mission was really twofold. One, to make sure I was aware, but two, to send a very strong message to the organization. Yeah. If he's going, you don't have an excuse. And this shows the importance of this effort. So kudos to them for making me uncomfortable and me saying, I ain't got time for that. I know enough. I know what that means. No, that's not the point. So you're too good for training, you might want to step back and really reassess where you are. It might be time for you to do something else, or really look at your leadership, effectiveness, because that's the other piece you need. You need employees that make you uncomfortable. I don't mean disrespectful. I mean uncomfortable. And if you're uncomfortable, there's a reason. So when they're talking to me about this and they're berating the secretary and why isn't it on his calendar and when's he going to do this? There's a reason that I was uncomfortable. I wasn't giving it the priority that it deserved in the eyes of the talent that I hired. So kudos to them for doing it, frustrating as it may be. And again, I'm the boss. Nobody tells me when to go to training, is not a good response. So look, the boss is no different than anybody else. The director, the leader, whatever. When you think you have learned it all, everything, or you don't need to go, again, time to reassess.
And I think, you know what, there's probably two things I want to say about that. The first one is, you know what you talked about in terms of not having people around you to make you uncomfortable is pretty much fait accompli in many businesses, because what happens is ego and pride are primary, mission is secondary, even though they tell people like, here's the mission, this is what we exist to do, right? Because then what happens is, and everybody else is so cognizant of trying to get to the top, and to get to you don't always get, well, not always, you're not rewarded for being the challenging one, the one who holds up what I call the conscious mirror to the business and going, do you know what, we need to look at ourselves. You don't get rewarded for that. You get rewarded for doing as you're told. And you get rewarded for saying yes. And I think you might disagree, privately, but publicly, you'd be like, "Oh yes, Chris, yes." And then you're holding.
I've tried that both ways. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work. But there's a lot of businesses very much run by that, and you can almost, if we put race to one side for a minute and think about this racing, when you look at all of the issues of corporate fraud, when you look at all of the issues of really poor, appalling behaviours within businesses, it's because there is a culture that does not value the truth. There is a culture that doesn't value people being able to say this is wrong. And what I talk about is like, it's almost like the birth of what I call moral courage as a key leadership trait. And that leadership trait, we need to recognize now leaders who do not have the job title.
Right.
We need to recognize that, those leaders who have the moral courage to go, Chris, you said you were going to do this and you didn't do it, and it's really important because, and that they can be like 10 ranks below you from a hierarchy point of view.
Absolutely.
But they are so driven by having the courage to do what's right for humankind, but also for your business or your organization, that transcends their pride and ego. And I think we don't spend enough time in that. I know from a HR perspective, when we spot talent, we're not looking for those variables. We're looking for people who can survive in the culture. We're looking for people who are unlikely to get fired by the CEO for being too gobby. Are they going
to stay around long enough to make this training?
Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? And then, but they're thinking like, I see so many things that are not right, but you know what? I need my paycheck. I want my shares. I want my bonus. I want to stay here until my long-term incentive plan pays out. So I'm going to sit here and bite my tongue. But even that in itself is, and this is not about black or white, that is a privilege in itself, because you might get to sit in that bubble where, you're just swallowing your values and you're putting it under the carpet. But then over here, there's a whole group of individuals or employees or community members or consumers or, whatever else it is, who are being harmed or being held back from opportunity because of your inability to give voice to what's not right in your company.
Yeah, and let's face it, there's a lot of military terms I could throw out there, but one of the terms that became and was a big part of my leadership, I guess, decision making is two things. One, and it's not really a military term, but will this decision withstand the front page test? Yeah. So if this goes south and it's on the front page of the newspaper tomorrow, would you be okay with it? Okay, so that's one. And then the other one is, and it's probably more close decisions is this a hill you're willing to die on? Meaning, you know, this could be the end of your career if you make this decision. And not everybody is in a place to unilaterally make those decisions on a daily basis. I mean, there's a lot of folks that need to put food on the table, that need a paycheck, that can't say, boss, you're wrong. And the consequences that may come with that. But what you hope you do is you hope you build a culture that will tell you that the emperor has no clothes,
right?
Or will tell you, boss, you're about to step in front of a train, and do you really want to do that? So a couple of positions in my organization that their number one goal, and they'll tell you to this day, was finance. And the financial officer, the very first conversation we had anytime I hired a financial officer was this: your number one job in life from this point forward while you work for me is to keep me out of jail.
Right.
So if I make a decision that is illegal, immoral, or unethical with money, your job, and it is a mandate, is to say, no, you can't do that. Because I may have some great idea about how I want to go after this money or do this or spend that. Your job is to prevent me from doing something stupid. I would say we need to do that more with our culture, and really empower our staff to say, boss, you're wrong, with no consequences.
Correct.
Now, there's a right way and a wrong way.
Yeah. It's not like, you know, guess what? Yeah. Because you know when you said like, somebody's going to get hit by a train almost, like if I make this decision, right? But I know in some businesses there are some people that so dislike their senior leadership team. They would deliberately, they'd be like, that is a great idea, Chris. And
go for it.
Listen, and you know what I would also do? I would go on LinkedIn and go and I would tell everybody, you know, they'd be just
here, go.
Do you know what I mean? They would literally be like,
yeah. So again, military term, another military thing. Let the lieutenant go ahead and you shoot him in the back. So I mean, you don't like the leader, just let them go. They'll stumble into something, and you'll get it out.
We're laughing, but I can tell you there are people who are using that as a tactic, because that's almost, for me, like, you know, when you know, because it's funny, but it's not funny, because it's actually quite tragic, because it's a passive aggressive way of dealing with what they know is a problem. So what they're saying is we are not empowered enough to be able to have our voice heard. So literally, we will either wait until the leader falls on their sword, or some people will create the conditions for the leader to fall on the sword, because thinking when that's gone, that will be the problem solved. But the culture isn't just about one individual either. You know?
Yeah, brute. Yeah, exactly. Somebody stabbed you in the back. But I think you actually on the panel with me where we took a picture of the panelists that were there. And
I think was it Sejal who said? Yeah.
Take a picture of this panel. Does your boardroom look like this?
Like this.
And I mean, it was a cross section of humanity. And I think if you can build a boardroom like that, if you can build a culture of diverse, talented individuals, there's nothing you can't accomplish, because then everybody feels valued, and there's not it's the privilege versus the held back, and there's just so many assumptions made when the boardroom looks like me, okay, and yet the staff is diverse. That's not a representative boardroom. So it really is got to be a concerted effort by the organization to look at itself from the inside out. I used to say this all the time whenever we were working to address some of our culture issues. We can't help others until our house is taken care of.
Oh, listen, own backyard, own. Yeah.
If you're not in a good place, there's no way you can help others. You can't deliver good services or product or whatever your product is, but you gotta fix it on the inside before you can ever do a good job on the outside.
I just want to share, I know, like, we get so carried away, and I forgot, like, people are being like comments. I'm so sorry, everybody. You know, I get like carried away. I'm sorry. Right. Look, Faith. Hello.
Right.
Hey.
No, that's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point. It's what we were talking about. You've got to empower, and you have to model it. You can't say, hey, tell me when I'm wrong. And when somebody comes and tell you they're wrong, they're out the door. So that is not exactly reinforcing behavior.
Right. Pavlov's dog. We all end up, we watch and we do, and that's it. We've been conditioned, so we know, don't speak up, because those that do, they're out the door.
Listen, I've worked for bosses where the very first day they told me, I need to know everything. I want you to tell me when I'm doing something wrong. I want you to let me know when the staff are upset or they're restless. Well, for about 6 months, that went really, really well. But the more problems I brought, they're like, do you ever bring good news? I said, you didn't tell me to bring you good news. You told me to tell you when there was problems. No, you bring you good news, I'll bring you good news.
But that's it, isn't it? It's almost like, you know, that's the point, because there comes a point when they go, do you know what, and it's a little bit like, even with all of this, you know, somebody said to me, like, you know, Shereen, it's really good that you're doing your videos, but don't you ever, like, aren't there any positive things that you can talk about? And then I was like, listen, no, there is not. Do you know what I mean? Because there's too many people that haven't got the memo. So until we got the memo, Chris, I've got to keep.
It's a struggle, and I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice because we don't spend enough time pointing out those successes. Right. So there were a ton of good things that were going on in our organization, and I was a huge fan of taking pictures, especially in this digital age and social media. Take pictures of the cookouts, take pictures of, you know, the costume parties, or the, you know, anything that was Halloween or whatever. And to go back and look over time and over the year and put together a collage of all the things you did together, man, it really, I mean, literally warms the heart and makes you feel good about your organization, because those were snapshots in time that create an experience. And again, if all you do is come to work and you go to your cubicle and you keep your head down for your work shift, and then you go home, are you really bought into the company, to the work that's being done? Or are you just here for the paycheck? And don't get me wrong, I know that's a reality.
Yeah.
That's a reality. But if you really want to change people and make a difference, you've got to help them understand what their role is with the team and how their role makes the team successful. And if you do that and you empower that, and back to the earlier statement, if you ask people to tell you when you're doing something wrong and they do, you have got to be open to that feedback. Because as soon as you shut it down.
But also the other thing is, if you're sitting on a board right now and you're literally scratching your head for the last time anybody brought you a problem, other than other than your C-suite bestie, because everybody always has a C-suite bestie. You know, like, it's like the CFO, the CMO, right, there's always one person, you know, who's always got the ear of the CEO, right? But other than that,
that's the person I miss the most.
Is it the C-suite bestie? That's like my phrase. That copyright. Yeah, I copyright that phrase. But, you know, and then if you can't think about the time when you literally had people queuing at your door, like metaphorically speaking, to tell you that this is not right, then you need to question your leadership, because you're not a leader.
No. Let me tell you, if nobody's bringing you problems, there's a reason.
Right. And if they're bringing you problems and you're shooting them down in flames, literally, and they're like on fire, there's a problem there too. And I think that's the thing. So, you know, it's a difficult one, because you so want to, like, galvanize. Like, I you know, everything that I do is to try and help people find the power to go and positively affect pressure, so we get the changes that we all want to see, right? Rather than thinking that, you know, Chris is going to do his bit, so I'll wait for Chris to do his bit, and Shereen is going to do that, and Dr. Joseph is going to do that, Saba, Margie, you know, all these people, you know, Celia is going to do that, rather than waiting for people. I'm saying we got to take some ownership here and accountability.
Right.
you know, whoever you are, whether you care enough and you're not black, but you care so much about this and you're like, this is not the world I want my kids to live in.
Right.
Whether we're black and we're going, we are tired of living this way. We are tired of our stories being the same as our parents, as our grandparents, as our great-grandparents. That has got to stop. But that can only, we have to change here first.
Right. You know, I think you also...
Going, do you know what I mean? Going like there. Like, what are we doing, you know? Because I'm good at that.
No, but you also bring up another point that I think is so prevalent. We live in an era where it's either left or right. It's right or wrong. It's liberal or conservative. It's Black Lives Matter or police lives matter. There's no, why can't both matter? Why can't you find middle ground on any of these topics? But it's like you have to pick a side. And that is so not true. It's kind of back where I started. We are so much more alike than we are different. Let's start there.
You know what, though, Chris? I think you see the world like that because of the way you see the world. Do you know what I mean? So I think because you quite early on what you know, like, so I always say to people, like, some people are closer to understanding and awareness than other people are because you've gone on a journey through your career, just through, you know, your upbringing and what you experience. And I think there are so many people who don't view life that way, so they can't even get to the state that you're talking about, which is middle ground, because they're so focused on defending their territory, which is their world, their stability, their, you know, and it's almost like we've gone into protectionism with this, you know, where some white people feel like black people are coming for their very lives.
Right.
And then equally, there's some black people who feel like all white people are always like ready to see them lose and. Now, somewhere in the middle is, you know, is all of this, but we cannot kid ourselves that everybody sees the world in the way you are, because to be honest, if all leaders had your level of self-awareness, and it's not to make you like the perfect leader, but there is so much more things, progressive things we could do with leadership that you're talking about, rather than in some instances the leadership that we have.
Well, you're very kind, but I think we all continue to make assumptions. It reminds me of a real quick story. So we moved into our neighborhood and we were the new neighbors, and our next door neighbor had a rabbit cage. Well, we had border collies when we moved in, and one day we see the rabbit is missing, and at the back door, our dog had a rabbit in its mouth, dirtied up, got dirt all over it and everything. So we're the new neighbors in the community. So I'm like, this is a great introduction. So, you know, I got to make a decision here. Am I going to be that neighbor that my dog took okay. So I'm like, okay, the rabbit doesn't look damaged. Maybe if I just wash the dirt off, I can clean this rabbit up and put it back in his cage, and they'll think the rabbit died of natural causes.
Oh, geez.
So I rinse the rabbit off, get all the dirt off of it, fluff it up a little bit, and I go put it back in the cage. So I know what time they get home. I'm looking out the window, and sure enough, in comes the neighbors, and I hear this blood-curdling scream. I mean, like there is a murder scene. And the lady is screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God." So I go running out the door, going to be all sympathetic about this. And I was like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" She said, "Oh my God, Bugs died yesterday. We buried him, and today he's back in his cage."
Oh, no.
So the point there is you really should have the tough conversations, okay?
Oh my goodness, I love that story.
Don't make assumptions. Go have the difficult conversation. It will be better in the end. I promise you.
Oh, do you know what? I feel like we need to finish on this note. That's like, I love this. I'm going to use this as a clip, like Chris's rabbit story. It's like, the fact that, but also, like, listen, I'm not going to deconstruct the whole story because, you know, like, that's how my mind is. But the fact that you went through all of the hassle of cleaning the rabbit, of putting the rabbit in the cage,
because I didn't want to have the tough conversation.
Right, but this is the point, isn't it? There's so much. It takes up so much mental energy, because the thing is that it pricks your conscience when you know you should have a conversation and you're not having it. Like, genuinely, it's only the most hard-hearted of individuals don't feel a thing. You know, it pricks your conscience. So you're still going through it here, which means you're still taking energy. So you might as well have the conversation and at least have it. get to a point. And I think the other bit quickly just to say is that with this and with this whole, particularly around race, I always say to people, if you can have a conversation around race, you can have a conversation about anything, because like ain't nothing more difficult than talking about race. Agreed. Right? But it's not always about reaching agreements, because we think about these conversations like negotiation conversations. Somebody has to lose and somebody has to win. In this, it's just about, to your very, very earlier point, about understanding each other's perspectives and giving respect to the lens in which, you know, in this instance, if you're like a white leader and you're talking to your black employee or whoever, what you're doing is you're respecting their lived experience, even though you can never understand. And it's not about you putting yourself in a position to go, I'm going to talk to them until I understand everything and I agree with everything. It's from a leadership perspective, but it's also from a humanity perspective to say, I have never gone through what you've gone through, but you know what?
Yeah,
this is what I can do.
Absolutely. And use that. You know, I use this term a lot. Everybody has a superpower, and a lot of people's superpower is different. The only question is, do you use it for good or evil? And hopefully people will use that knowledge and, that superpower for good. But thank you. This has been way cool.
Well, so, and listen, I've got to apologize to everybody, right? Because I've been really shit on bringing in the comments. So like they're probably thinking, what is it? I'm so sorry. Look, there's loads. Okay, I'm really
okay. Do we need to answer questions?
Well, we're meant to. Well, you know, because I like the interaction, but only because
I got to do full disclosure. I got a full. So don't I look professional?
Can I tell the story? No. Let me just say, so everyone's like, why is this short? So when we did this, I was like, Chris, I'm in like a Gap t-shirt, like nobody can see, right? I'm in my Gap t-shirt, always in bloody t-shirts, right? And Chris is there with his shirt with his suit jacket, and I was like, why are you making me look bad? And he was like, right, I'm gonna take it off. So like you took it off, and then he was like, but let me just tell you, I'm in shorts, and he literally just stood up. You're a hot mess, Chris. You're a hot mess.
Thank you. Thank you. Keeps me alive.
Oh dear. Right, listen. Look, somebody's going, oh my God, Chris, listen. He's got no shame. It's like terrible. Right, let me do a quick scroll. Right.
Okay.
Right. Frankie. Hi, Frankie. Look, let's read Frankie's comment and then you can comment on this because there's like loads.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. But a lot of people don't have self-confidence. And man, I tell you what, once again, getting to know your team, you know, where are they at? What do they need? Do they need, leadership training? Do they need, what do they call it? Personality assessments. Again, back to an earlier statement, you got to know yourself before you can know others. And you know, not everybody's had the Minnesota multiphasic assessment tool 16 times, so that you know they think they're psychotic from all the different personalities they have. So, yeah. So I think that's a great point, and a lot of our staff aren't confident. So how do we help them build that confidence so that they will be heard, they can be heard, and they feel comfortable or confident to be heard? So great point. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think the other thing with that is it's almost like, so I remember talking to someone, I gave somebody a real headache when I was trying to explain this, but I was saying, you know, that it's because the messiness and the complexity of when you're different and you're in a society that does not accept you for who you are purely because of the color of your skin or, you know, or whatever difference that you have that's easily noticeable. It's very difficult to extrapolate how much of the way for me, how much of the way I am now is because of the way I am versus how much am I because of the environment and the conditioning and society in which I've grown up. So if that wasn't there, would I still be me? And if I wasn't always thinking like I've got to put my battle jacket on, because you've got to protect yourself. As black people, we got to protect ourselves in some way, shape, or form, right?
Can't even imagine.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because to some extent, you allow your confidence and your self-image to be eroded by how you're treating, that stops you stepping up and regaining that confidence to almost like rise above it, but it's difficult to rise above it. So you always end up in this perpetual cycle of, you try and step up and go, right, okay, no, I'm going to do this time. You get knocked back for whatever reason, or you get dismissed, you get excluded, you get ignored. And every time that happens, you end up taking more minus, until you get to a point where you don't recognize yourself. And I think that was the thing that provoked me to basically like snap, for want of a better word, and just, you know, like just go like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot pretend, you know, to not be who I really am. But I also cannot pretend that this doesn't affect me. And I think there's so many of us that are still possibly thinking that, you know, I'm all right, Jack, or, you know, I'm all right with, you know, even if you're not black and it's just something else, right? I'm okay, but you're really not. You know what I mean?
I think everybody wants to believe they're okay. I mean, but how many of us were shaped by what happened at the supper table? You know, I can remember many a night after supper feeling not real good about myself. So at some point, do you get help for that? Do you address the things that shape you? And are you willing to acknowledge them? So that's a lot of very difficult internal questions that our staff and our friends have.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like we can go on for days, Chris. Me and you could be like talking forever. So I feel like we need to give people. Well,
I could listen to you for days. I love the accent. It's awesome.
Oh, stop it! Like, stop it! Tally ho! No, I super appreciate you, and I listen, like, so much gratitude, and you know, gratitude that even you said yes, but also gratitude for, you know, the work that you're doing with the Systemic Diversity and Inclusion group. And if anybody doesn't know about the group, you really do need to go and I don't know if there's a link or something. Anyway, I'll try and find a way. But what I love is the global collectiveness.
Yeah.
That's what I absolutely love. People from all different walks of life, all different experiences. We all do very different things in this sphere, but we're all trying to get to that same destination, you know?
If I could, just real quick on that, you know, if you'd have told me as a young man, you know, in my 18 or 20 years old, that I would be doing basically television, is basically what this is, with African American, LGBTQ, gay athletes. I mean, I'm the outlier, quite frankly. But the level of uncomfortableness is really exhilarating. I'm opening my mind to things that I never thought, one, that I could, two, that I would, but it makes you a better human. My opinion. Now, that may sound arrogant. If it does, I apologize. But
no, I agree.
The more worldly you can become, the more you know about humanity, the more you can be humane. And I think that's where, at least at this stage of my life, I'm trying to do better and learn more so that I can be more. But it's just incredible work, and your show and the work that you do. And I'm very disappointed we didn't get to dance today.
Well, listen, we are not going to give away anything, but we have got a very hot ticket panel coming up in the autumn. I'm not saying anything like I'm not saying I'm not allowed. But can I say it's shit hot? It's shit hot.
Sure, absolutely.
Can I say it's shit hot? So that's all we're gonna say. It's all we're gonna say. So we're gonna, I'm gonna be like, well. Anyway.
So okay, little known fact. Last comment. Little known fact. So, you know, when you have those group meetings and you go around the room and everybody's got to write down something that nobody would ever guess about you. It's some kind of super crazy no way thing. So, little known fact about Chris Dobbins. I once won a talent contest for breakdancing.
Shut up. You're lying.
I am not.
Shut up.
I am not. Now, the only problem is the VHS tape that it's on broke. So I don't have proof, but I promise you it's the truth.
So are you one of those, like at the wedding, like, and they put some track on and then all of a sudden you're there like, yeah, right. You're that, are you that one?
Now, if I break dance today, I break for real. So it's in the past.
Oh my God, Chris, you are too much. You are too much.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, my lady.
Thank you so much. So yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. Go and connect with Chris. Like, he's super, super cool. So just a couple of things I want to say is that I've got my usual mad LinkedIn live stream with Abi and Leanne on Friday at 2 o'clock British summer time. This time next week, Wednesday, I've got a conversation with James and Umar, and we're talking about the stereotypes of Black men, strong Black man, and we're talking about that whole stereotype, which is going to be really cool. And then pretty much after that, that's me for 2 weeks until September, and then I've got loads and loads of crazy live streams coming up. And Celia's in here. Hi, Celia, because Celia and I are also going to do this, which I know, you know what I said to her? I basically was like, we've got the same surname, Celia, so we have to do this. That was like my plug. That was my way in, like using the fact that we have the same surname. So, and she said yes, so it worked. Yeah, so thank you. And thank you everybody for tuning in, and I'll see you Friday.
See you. Bye-bye.